Amanda with Straightsmile Solutions, straightsmilesolutions.com, and today we're going to do a couple of mock Ceph analysis. And I have a lot of other content on cephalometric x-rays, specifically when do you need them, how do you get them, what if you don't have a Ceph machine, what the workarounds are, do you need them for Invisalign, all that kind of stuff. You can access that information. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel here. I'm just going to supplement the content I've already made. But if you want to watch all the rest of that content, you should really watch that first before you watch this video. There's a lot of really great info in there. To access that, you go to YouTube, put in the search bar Straightsmile Solutions. That'll take you to my YouTube channel. From there, scroll down, and there's a playlist called Cephs. And from there, watch all those other ones first before you listen to this, or you're going to get really confused. In addition, listen, I am not at all a Ceph expert. I probably was more of one 20 years ago when I was in residency, because we had to trace our own Cephs, get our own angles, plot our own points on every single case. And to be honest, you get a little bit of rusty after a little while, because first of all, you're not getting Cephs on every case, and you're only looking at the points that you need to look at. And now there's automated tracing and everything like that. So you get a lot rusty. Remember, there's hundreds and hundreds of different types of Ceph analysis. And a lot of times I work with doctors and they'll like bust out one that, I don't use that one. I don't know these points. Sorry. I know the points that I know and the points that I use, which is really all that I need. And it might be different than the ones you're using. So I'm going to tell you what I know and what's relevant to this case. But I highly recommend that you do just get a basic ortho textbook. Now, the one that I used in dental school was Profit, and that's a really, really basic one. If you have zero ortho knowledge, you need to start with that one. Read it cover to cover. There's probably a section in there on Cephs a little bit, but Cephs is a little more advanced. But you need to understand basic ortho first before you can understand Cephs. From there, I did a deep dive into what was out there in terms of content, because I have no idea how we learned it. I really don't remember. From there, you can go to a more advanced ortho textbook, and you don't have to buy a new one. I'm all about, reuse, recycle. So if you go to Amazon and you go to my second favorite one for a little more advanced is Graber, Graber, and you could buy an older edition. Listen, Cephs haven't changed. So it's okay if you're reading an edition from the 80s or 90s, because it's not changing. So, and they do have a lot of stuff. There's not like a good Ceph chapter, but it's definitely in there. You can look up different terms and stuff and look at it. And that's what I use for reference still, is the Graber one. So you can get that for like $15-20. The new one's like $160. Just get a used one. Save money. And you'll find that really helpful for your ortho. Okay. And then I'm going to be starting to work on a document perhaps that can help y'all with basic Ceph stuff. I think it's going to be really helpful, but what month are we? We're almost in April 2022. It is not ready yet. So I'm going to work on that. It is going to be available in my store. The fees are $20. You can get that, or if you're one of our clients, either our premium or a concierge or whatever, we give you these documents for free. Or even, even if you do an a la carte session, I'll include at least up to 3 documents for free. I'm pretty flexible on stuff like that. But yeah, I don't just give them out. Sometimes I give them out like special, like if we do like a webinar or something for 24 hours after the webinar. But yeah, that's only going to be available to our clients, because it does take me a lot of effort and time and money to create these. But anyways, I will be working on that. That should be ready in the next few weeks. But okay, so let's talk about this mock-up patient. So remember, you might need, especially on growing patients, if you're taking interceptive or phase 1 patients, you need to know how to get Cephs, you need to know how to read them, and you need to know how to use them, because you're going to need them on patients. Maybe not all, but a lot of them. Also, if you're taking harder cases with Invisalign, you need Cephs. You do, because you're not going to know where to put the teeth. So this is going to be simulating a phase 1 patient, and maybe why you'd need a Ceph, right? So a lot of orthodontists take Cephs on every single case. Whether you need it on every single Invisalign case is a different story. You need to go by your own standard of care, your own dental practice acted in your state. Most orthodontists do take them on everyone just because it's so easy and it's just part of the protocol. It's almost easier for me to have one on every single case, just instead of having the team have to say, do I need one? Obviously if it's a crazy easy case, 3 millimeters of crowding class 1, no vertical issues, no AP issues, might not take one, but certainly on kiddos, I think you do need them, especially ones that are growing a little funky. So if let's say someone just took the Ceph and showed me this picture, I would already know something was off. This doesn't look right to me. And my eye is trained to see what looks right and what isn't. So a lot of orthodontists are not going to get numbers on every case. We only get numbers when we're trying to make a decision. I mean, maybe they do, but you don't have to, you know? But because you guys are trying to learn, you guys need to get numbers because you're not going to know what I see with my eye, right? So what am I looking at? I mean, I'm looking at the shape of and the angle of the mandible, the position of the jaws relative to the cranial base. I'm looking at the nasopharyngeal airway. I'm looking at the oral airway. Woo, that looks super small right here. So that's a red flag to me right there. I definitely see that the face is growing really long and there's a gonial notch here, which is a red flag to me. I see some chin strain and the soft tissue here. This is really long. You know, the face is supposed to be in thirds. This is really long down here relative to this. So that's a red flag to me. This is like a regular vertical grower open bite look that you see, and most likely has some type of airway issue. If I had to guess, if you took a look at this patient's tonsils, I'll bet you they're nuts. So there's definitely either a problem with nasal airway or a problem with air blockage in here, because you can see how tiny this is. It shouldn't be this small. So this patient is a huge red flag to me. If I saw this patient, this 8-year-old, come in my practice, I'd be 100%, first of all, need to do maybe an OMT eval, maybe send to ENT. There might be something you can't just address with ortho alone. There might be habits. We would do a SDB eval. This is not something you could just slap some braces on and fix. There's a lot going on here. And if you do not intervene with this patient, the patient's gonna have some funky growth and some funky airway issues that are gonna have to be corrected with jaw surgery. So it's really important to catch these patients and to intervene quickly. So I really like to so way back when, even when I was in residency, we were pretty much trained on Steiner. That's just how I was trained, right? But I actually like to have a combination of both Sassoon Plus and Steiner. Why? Because Sassoon is really, so when you're asking for different types of analyses, when you're sending off, and again, watch all the other videos I've made on Ceph, how to get them if you don't have one, blah, 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 workarounds. The reason why I like Sassoon is because they actually make it really easy to understand. They put it in plain English for you here. You know, all the things I said I just saw was basically confirmed by what we say here. So we're gonna pretty much go through point. The other things that you're gonna look at is you're gonna look at all these things with all these different stars. Anything that has multiple stars, you know, more than 2 or 3, you wanna look at and know what that means and what does that mean for your case and what does that mean for your treatment planning. Now, I also like Steiner because there's a lot of points that I use that aren't in Sassoon, like SNA, SNB, A and B, pretty much are the main ones I use. But it's funny because you don't see an awful lot of stars here, but I see a lot of stars here. So that's why I like to have 2, because to me, this looks like a problem. This makes more sense to me. Sometimes I'll take one and this makes more sense to me. So that's why I like to have 2. Now, some Ceph tracing companies are gonna charge you extra for 2, some aren't. It's a question to ask. So let's go through this, okay? So things I talked about, yeah, this patient's class 1, fine, great. Vertical pattern, strong open bite tendency. I told you I saw that in the Ceph, right? Well, they just confirmed it, okay? So what else? They said that the upper incisor, maxillary incisor is protruded. It's leaned forward. Okay, yeah, because it's trying to compensate for the tendency. So that makes sense. So that's telling me that this is compensating and that we actually might be almost a little bit class 3 in terms of dental pattern. And that we need to fix this open bite or it's going to keep compensating, right? We are having a decent growth direction, but we do have long maxilla posteriorly. So that's, again, a sign of an open bite tendency. What else? It's interesting here. Flat upper lip. Okay, yeah, you can see that. I mean, look at the nasolabial angle. We don't want that. You know, we'd like it to be more full for sure. And normal lower incisor position. Now let's see what we see here. We talked about this, the upper incisor being flared, and that's what the 2 stars are there, okay? IMPA is talking about the position of the mandibular plane angle. So let me go ahead and tell you a little bit more about what IMPA means. I'm actually gonna read something out of Graeber because it just probably makes more sense to read it out of Graeber. Let's see where it is. IMPA. The IMPA defines the axial inclination of the mandibular incisor relative to the mandibular plane. It's a good guide for maintaining or positioning these teeth in relative to the basal bone. So they're just talking about the lower incisors relative to the lower jawbone and the angle of that. Okay, so that is actually normal. So these teeth are normal. That tells me I could flare if I needed to. I have some flexibility in the position that I put those lower incisors, so that is important. What else is good here? Good information. One thing that they really highlighted here is the dental alveolar compensation. They put 5 stars. That's basically meaning that the teeth are either extruding or leaning forward to try to compensate for this open bite. They're going in a position that really isn't that healthy. So that's telling you that something's going on with the growth there. So these are pretty much the points that you need to know. So obviously, like I said, what does this mean to me? All these different stars and standard deviations and everything. Well, everything is pretty much here, but it's telling me this patient has a growth pattern that is not good. It's a long face growth pattern. It's a steeper growth pattern, and that we need to fix the airway so that we know what to do. So, and like I said, you can totally see this is a tiny airway here. Obviously, my guess is something's going on with the nose in terms of occlusion. Maybe this patient has allergies. Maybe this patient has oral habits. So we need to dig in and get a little more information so that we can create our treatment plan. But this Ceph basically confirms what I'm seeing probably on the patient. So hopefully this helps you. Like I said, there's so many, like hundreds and hundreds of points and hundreds of plans. You just need to know the basic. But I love the idea of getting both the Sassoon and the Steiner analysis because I like SNA and SNB. Let me tell you a little bit about those points. So SNA is the angle. It's so sella. They're doing sella. They're doing nasion. So sella is the base of the pituitary gland. Nasion is, oh God, I can't remember the actual definition of that. It's a nasal bone. But it's the angle of the relative horizontal position of maxilla to the cranial base. So the position of the maxilla to the cranial base, is it forward, is it back? Obviously, in a patient that was maxillary deficient, class 3 maxillary deficient would have an SNA that reflected that, right? So the range is generally 80 to 84% in a Caucasian sample. Remember, Ceph norms were made for a Northern European Caucasian population. So if you have an African American patient, things are going to be a little bit different. They're going to be a little bit bigger. They're going to be a little bit more forward, and that's totally fine. If you have an Asian population, often they're going to be a little more back, but that's totally fine for that patient. So you really have to take into account the patient's ethnicity when you do this, and that is not something that happens in Ceph. So I take everything with a Ceph with a grain of salt. I look at their face, I look at the harmony and say, does this look right to me? I don't want to make somebody who's African American look like a Caucasian face. And I'm trying to say this in a really nice way. I'm not saying this in a negative way. I'm saying that if we treat everyone to Caucasian norms, it's not going to look right on them. You know, it looks harmonious on them. That look is fine. And when I did some lecturing a couple years ago in Thailand, I remember that was a huge issue that came up with we had Thai population, Chinese population, we had all kind of Asian population there, and they kept saying, we do not want our patients to look like a Caucasian face. And I totally get that. So this is not the Bible, the Ceph numbers, okay? They're just a guide, so you know. But if your patient is not Northern European Caucasian population, then these norms may not be for them. So you need to take them with a major grain of salt. All right, thanks so much.